Good morning. Welcome to our session this morning, so early in the morning. I want to welcome the panelists and the audience. That was a bit of a, yeah. So welcome to the session on getting started and introduction to home education. In other words, things I wish someone had told me about home education. Now, I would have liked to have heard this a long time ago, but there weren't very many people around at home educated when I started, so I had to stumble my way through. So I'm looking forward to hearing what these ladies have to say. Our panelists today are on the far left, Juliet in English. Next to her is Deborah Lutov. Then we have Erica DiMartino from Italy. Oh, I didn't mention where they're from. So we go back and start. Juliet is from UK. Deborah is from Switzerland. Erica is from Italy. And then we have Joy Mendoza from Philippines and Jan Smith from USA. So we will go in that order. And the remote, you're doing PowerPoint, is here. And let's get started, Erica. Not Erica. Juliet.
Okay, so I'll need my slides up for Juliet English, please. Thank you. So I am Juliet English. I have home educated 7 children since 1998. And I often talk to families. I work with many hundreds of families and talk to them about home education and starting out particularly when people are a little nervous. So I always say to people, when you're starting out, and I do wish somebody had told me this, first of all, think about why are you choosing home education? Why are you choosing the approach that you've chosen? Or if you haven't chosen the approach, to think about that. Why are you following certain methods? So everything right from the beginning, if you're able to scrutinize why you're doing it. And then we also have the what. What is motivating you? What is driving you, and what frightens you. Because we often find that people haven't always thought necessarily about what is motivating them. They may have taken their child out of school because things weren't working out, but we do need to think about that. And because if we are starting out right in the beginning, knowing these things just actually helps change our whole approach, how we approach our children, how stressed we get, all of those things. Okay, so what I want to really do is look at the negative motivations, because I find a lot of people don't actually examine these. And this is particularly to do with the approach that parents are taking. So most of us come with some kind of baggage. We had our own school experiences, we have our own hurts, we may have been told certain things about ourselves, we believe certain things about ourselves. And if we can actually bring all that baggage into our home educating journey, and it can then impact what we're doing. Then we also have fear. And people don't always realize they have fear. What kinds of fears am I talking about? It's a fear that people will look at you and judge you. Fear, in our case, that the local authority may find your education unsuitable. And some of these things will differ from country to country, so I'm speaking in the context that I'm familiar with. Another fear is that your family members will say, you're too thick, you're too stupid. How can you home educate? What have you done? And another one is that your child will be behind. And I do remember very early in my home education journey praying, please make this work out, please make this work out. So worried that how I would be compared with my sisters-in-law and who sent their kids to school and that kind of thing. This is a very important one, and we do need to break that down. Oops, there we go. Comparison. I had a friend who used to say to me, oh, have you done this and that? Oh, you must do it. It's amazing. My kids just loved it. And I had to learn to turn that off. I had to learn to switch that voice off, because just because it worked for her didn't mean it would work for my children. And so you have to sort of avoid comparing. And when you see some people that appear to be doing things like really well, and you think, oh, they look at their children are so great and they just listen and mine don't do that. You've got to really avoid that comparison and focus on your own family. And then the last one is disapproval. And once again, we come against sort of family members, friends, that fear once again. I think you all know what I'm talking about, to be honest. But just think a little bit about, who are you worried about? So I always feel like right at the beginning of your home education journey, it's helpful if you ask yourself, where do you want to go? Now, often we have very high aspirations when we start out. Your child will get their university degree at the age of 12 and that kind of thing. And some kids do really, really well, but, the chances are your children will be pretty ordinary. They'll be spectacular in their own way to you that loves them and knows them. But, you ask yourself, well, what's really important? For me, happiness is important. Being able to support themselves is really, really important. I have no interest in supporting my children at the age of 35. And what is success to you? What does that look like? And that really should be turned, as your children get older, that should be turned over to them. What does success look like to them? And what outcome do we want for our children? And once again, that's got to be adaptable, because we can't keep putting our expectations, our hopes, our dreams on our children. So at some point, you need to put them in the driver's seat and let them start thinking about those questions for themselves. I love this analogy. I'm sure many of you may have come across it. I used to subscribe to the Elijah Company long ago. It tells you how long I've been home educating. And they spoke about this analogy, and it stuck with me. There is an experiment, or that was done, not an experiment, but an analogy, whatever you want to call it, where the professor stood in front of his students and he showed them a big jar, rocks, pebbles, sand. And he said, do you think this will all fit in this jar? And they said, no, it won't fit in this jar. And he said, well, I will show you how it will fit in the jar. And he took the rocks, put them in first, the big things. And then he took the pebbles and he put them in, he shook it about so they all fell into the cracks. And then he filled it up with sand, and that it all fit in, and at the end of it, he still poured some water in there. So it could fit even the water in there. And this analogy is talking about how you order your priorities. And to me, this is quite an important bit of information. So what are the rocks for you? What are the biggest priorities? When you look back on your home educating journey, what do you want to say? We really took care of these things. They were important to us. So I've given some examples here. It will differ from one to the other. But for me, our biggest priorities were our faith and our beliefs, relationship with family, relationship with others, along with faith and beliefs was relationship with God, and character. That is so very important, because character is actually what will see your child get through difficulties and challenges. Your pebbles, to me, mine were life skills, literacy, numeracy, good if they can read and do some math, having a good work ethic, developing their gifts and talents, and helping them learn to care and serve, which kind of fits in with character as well. But it's the other things that fit around those big rocks. And the sand is your remaining filler things. So your sundry academics, busy work, watching TV, console games. Imagine if you spent all your time doing console games. You would never fit those rocks in there. You'd never get your important things. So everything has to have its order for you as a family of what is important. And if you make sure you're fitting those things in, those big things in, you will achieve that goal more than if you haven't thought about it. So there's an intentionality to it, which I think is really helpful from the beginning. And if you can agree as partners in a relationship, husband-wife, and as your children get older, that they can also align with that, then you will be well on your way to successfully managing your home education. So what does this look like in education, where every child is different and every child is going to, they have different personalities, temperaments, talents, weaknesses and strengths. I've just listed here some factors to consider. I don't want to spend a lot of time on them, but it's emotional, physical, mental development, how ready your children are to learn things, their learning style, their motivation, positive experiences, building in lots of good memories, happy memories with your child into everything you do, and having respectful relationships. I have just put here for anyone's edification, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, so we can bear in mind where children's most basic needs are, and we make sure we meet those first before we move on to the others. You can go and look this up. You don't need me to explain it. And this is my favorite analogy. If you have a wardrobe, you have a T-shirt and a coat hang, how do you make it turn out all nice and neat? And not like this. And what this little picture for me is about, children need something to hook the knowledge onto. If you just throw knowledge at them, which is often what we see is the model in schools, if you just throw knowledge at them, it might be there somewhere, but you're going to have to look hard to find it. When children are asking the questions themselves, when they're motivated to learn, when they are the ones doing the exploring, they hang all that information very neatly on the coat hangers of their mind and put them on the rail of their mind. They organize it so that they can follow those pathways to find the information that they need. So I'm going to end my presentation now. I could go on forever, but I'm going to end it right there. Thank you very much.
You just come right up, sure.
Hi, so my name is Debbie, and I'm from Switzerland. And exactly what was going to happen is we have the same kind of things to say. So I figured I was going to do this a little bit differently and just put pictures up and talk from there. So my kids have this fascination about school panels. So every time we go to a museum somewhere, they always find a school meetup point and they kind of pause under it. So I have quite a few of those. I was at the UN a couple weeks ago, and at the Department of Education, the one thing that they're really worried about is mental health and soft skills. The fact that kids today were so concentrated on their academic achievements that we forget that for a full human to exist, that human also is not only good at math and geography, but that kid is also gifted with maybe being particularly good at, conflict resolution between friends, or maybe he's an amazing singer, or maybe they're really good at keeping on looking for answers to questions and things. And my take when people go, how do I start to homeschool? I'm like, you don't. You just stop and you just watch your kids. You just let them come. And when they have questions, my son was asking me with 5 or 6, what's this Pythagoras thing that everybody's talking about? And the first answer as an adult who's been to school would be, oh, that's not a question for you, that's too complicated. We'll see to that later. And to Juliet's point, answer the questions, because then they fit, then the kids know and it remains. So Pythagoras, for those who don't remember, is that square thing. And that just shows, I have adults today who have seen that in my house and go, oh, that's what it means. And I've seen it over and over with the homeschooling, stuff that we have learned at school, but we never actually took the time to really integrate or understand. And yeah, then it's complicated. But my 4-year-old or 5-year-old, who's the little brother of the kid who asked the question, he got it straight away, and he can now explain it. And from that day on, for some reason, math then for them became something easy, something comfortable. So my first point would be don't homeschool, just go with it, just answer the questions. Independence. When you have little kids, it can be very overwhelming to be homeschooling because you have this impression that they're already always there, but they're even more there when you have them all the time, and you have this impression sometimes that you never get time out, and people are always worried. They're like, how am I going to get anything done if I always have the kids with me? And to me, very quickly, I realized my kids were actually quite happy keeping busy by themselves. So the question was, how do I give them enough stuff that they can, if needs be, be busy without me at some point. And very quickly I realized with my teens, I almost have to like take appointments to see them because they are so busy doing things, being involved, and then they come out and, oh mom, we have volunteered, to organize for this event. Can you show us how Excel works or how this works? And again, if I had tried, because I did, to show them some of these computer skills at the point where they were not interested, they kind of looked at me and went, yeah, whatever. And then all of a sudden they run an event, they have 50 volunteers, they need, and then the stuff sticks. Same with the bike. My son has all of a sudden become a very gifted mechanic. And then another thing people always worry about is how are you going to teach these kids rigor and holding on to a timetable, and how do you become an adult, that knows how to be there on time if you're homeschooling, because you guys don't get up in the morning and you guys sleep in when it's raining, and how can you be doing all these things and then expecting these kids to be able to fit in a work environment. Well, when you're homeschooling, you have time to do a lot of other things. One of my daughters is a gymnast, and trust me, when you practice 3 hours a day, 3 to 4 times a week, you learn to be rigorous. You learn to be on time. When you pass in front of a panel of judges, when you have team members, you learn to respect each other. You don't have to go sit in a classroom to learn that. The kid with the red cap there is on the spectrum. He's autistic. He doesn't like people. He only likes his computer. Or so he thought, but it turns out that not being under pressure all day at home, he's very happy to go help a neighbor who needs a hand with the roof, and then come back and bore me to death with technical issues of roofs for hours. One of my kids is a hockey player, same thing. You get time. You get to learn rigorous. You get to learn to respect also other people. And all these things you can't learn around the table. You can't just sit at home, open a book, and you can teach them about respect. But it doesn't mean anything unless you live it in your relationship, I believe, with your partner. You show it to them, and they have to be able to experiment it. And then what happens is you have to trust them. So my 15-year-old at one point wanted to join the youth council, and I thought he was a little bit young. When he started, he was actually 14, and it finished quite late. But his sister was there, so I thought, okay, why not? And on the picture there with the 4 people standing, one of them is the president of the Confederation of Switzerland. Because I trusted that kid to just go with the flow, and he was made General Secretary of the Youth Council of Lausanne when he was 15. Because I trusted him to go, and I let him do it, and then he could fly with that. There, my little girl one of her favorite things is to garden with her grandfather, and the conversations they have on history. And how was it when you were a kid, that grandpapa, and all these things. I can't bring that to her. I can open a book and I can teach her stuff, but the things she comes back to and tells me her grandfather said to her, and then she Googles stuff, and she goes and gets history information and checks on things that she's discussed with him while being busy with her hands, are these things that stick with her. She was telling a lady on the train the other day about the 100-Year War, just because she was speaking about it with her grandfather, and then she Googled it, and she just, now it sticks, she knows. Next, we were at Swiss Intelligence. We were asked to help them with some UN programs on mines and things like that, and they needed children to play the parts in the mock exercise. And of course, who's free during the week? Homeschoolers. So we end up living quite a few of these amazing experiments. And so my 8-year-old there, who is Swiss, who technically should have nothing to do with mines, all of a sudden ends up sitting with people who work in ONGs and discussing things like that. And again, that is because, and she has this awareness of the world. When people tell me, oh, your kids don't know the real world, well, I would beg to differ. And then, yeah, we do stuff like sports, and actual school stuff. Somewhere in between, I would argue at ours, it's almost more like the sand, to be honest. It fits in between. Yeah, Lily was carrying the Olympic flame for the Junior Olympics when they came to Lausanne. These are all things that mean you're in contact with people. You're in contact with so many different people. Just get out of your house and live. My 2 older kids are doing biology, but they can't sit at the table. Apparently, my children, they don't know how to do that. So they're always on the floor. And then if I had one thing I would say to you, if you don't know how to start, just read to your children. Just read. Sit down, read. Stories, history books, whatever religion you're in, go there. Just read to your kids, spend time together, give them that confidence in themselves that they can go and explore because they know they're safe when they come back home. And I will leave you with that. Thank you very much.
Hi, everybody. I'm Erica, and I'm a mom of 5 home-educated kids from Italy. My youngest is 8. My oldest is 19. He's here with me today. And today I want to talk about the true nature of learning. We want to embrace home education. We want to talk about the nasty stuff, though. I want to talk about the challenge of traditional learning perceptions, because it's ingrained with us. Let's start with a quick image search for children learning. You can do it on your smartphones if you want, while I go ahead and do it here. So this is in English. I did it in several languages. And what do we see when we look it up? We see children sitting at a desk. We see children with pens and books. We see children raising their hands enthusiastically. This is in Polish. Actually, I'm sorry, there's a little girl that's extremely bored there. This is in French. And again, what do we see? We see, again, school settings, people sitting. They're always sitting. I even did it in Japanese. Can you believe it? This is what we get when we search children learning. Finally, I did it in Italian. Oh my goodness, there's John Halt's book up there. Well, the search engine wanted to please me. Okay, this is not the Italian one. This is because I search up a lot of cool things on home education, and that's what they gave me. So what is the challenge number 1 when we start home education? It's what is around us, what the perception is. It's the conventional mindset. Because the prevalent belief that effective learning happens only in structured, formal setting is deeply ingrained in our society and in us. The mindset limits the perception of learning possibilities, and it undervalues diverse educational methods. If it has to look like sitting at a desk, oh my goodness, it's a fraction of what it could be. Imagine if we believed that the only way to get fit was to run on a treadmill. Yeah, sure, treadmills are wonderful, aren't they? But what about hiking up a mountain? What about dancing to your favorite music? What about swimming in the ocean? Each of these activities produces unique benefits and joys that treadmills simply can't offer. Sorry for treadmills. So similarly, sticking to traditional classroom settings like we have seen on a general search, well, it ignores the rich, varied, and often more engaging methods that are available to us as teachers and as parents. So think back when you were in school. Now, how often did you find yourself just staring out the window, wishing to be somewhere else? The rigid structure of traditional education really can stifle creativity and curiosity. It's like keeping a lively, curious puppy in a kennel all day. Well, of course, it's safe, but is it the best thing? One of the beauties of home education is definitely the freedom of exploring learning in so many different ways. Now, we heard beautiful stories from our speakers, and I could add more to that. Children can learn math through cooking, understanding fractions and measurements as they bake a cake. They can grasp scientific concepts by planting a garden and observing how it grows. History can come alive in books and field trips and reenactments. There's so much out there. And let's not even mention the life skills, real life skills that you can't get when you're cooped up somewhere. Which is the social pressure and expectations. Society's pressure on parents and children to conform to traditional educational standards is immense. The moment you mention that you're home educating your kids, it's like opening the floodgates of unsolicited advice and concerns. Suddenly, everyone is going to become an expert on education. It's going to be your friendly neighbor. It's going to be the cashier at the grocery store. And what are they going to ask? But what about socialization? They ask that as if your child was going to transform into a socially awkward hermit overnight. Oh my goodness, is that what they really think? That is it. It's true. We know it's not true, do we? Furthermore, parents often face resistance not just from society, but from people within their own circle, their families, the grandparents, the aunts, the uncles. They all have expectations, they all have concerns, they're well-meaning, we love them, right? But they're still questioning whether the children will get the education they need to succeed in life. And now we need another panel on what does it mean to be successful in life, right? Because whatever is that, oh, sorry, I'm gonna break your microphone. So I've been at this for over 15 years, and I promise that home education truly can offer a rich, varied social experience. Home educated children often participate in co-ops and sports teams, online learning groups, community service, you name it, we do it. Moreover, the idea that formal education is the only path to success is becoming increasingly outdated. Look, these are just a few of the more modern home educators. Many successful individuals, from entrepreneurs to artists, have thrived outside the conventional educational system. They found their passions, pursued it with dedication, and often credited their unconventional backgrounds for their creativity and their resilience. And here we are at our third challenge, because, it's crucial to recognize that often your biggest obstacle is not your environment, but it's you. It's true. It's our mindset. You kind of think that, you're here at the convention, everybody talks in such an inspirational way, right? It's true. Think about how confident you are right now, how you are when you're reading about the benefits of home education. You agree with all we have said up until now. The ideas resonate with you deeply. And you can see how this approach fosters creativity, critical thinking, and love for learning. You're inspired. However, and this will happen to any one of us, as the date of an important exam approaches, or when the neighbor's kids, they casually mention the scores of their latest tests, those fears, those doubts, they start to creep back. And suddenly the reassuring theories and successful case studies seem distant and less convincing, clearly. So you start to question if your child is truly prepared, if they're learning enough, if you are doing enough, if they're keeping pace with their peers. These doubts can be overwhelming, and they can make it difficult to maintain the confidence that you had, perhaps previously, in your choice of home education. And we've all been there. I've been there several times. It doesn't end. It's like knowing that a balanced diet and regular exercise are keys to a healthy lifestyle. I think we all understand it, we all agree with it, right? But when we see a decadent dessert or a cozy couch on a rainy day, our resolve weakens, doesn't it? So the principles of home education are easy to endorse in theory, but they can be challenging to uphold in the face of society's pressure and internal insecurities. How can we fix it? Well, first of all, remember that education is not a race. Each child is unique with their own pace and their own style of learning. The pressure to conform to traditional benchmarks can overshadow all the incredible benefits that you've been hearing about in this conference. And it's essential to remind ourselves that the goal is not to replicate the conventional system at home, but to change it, to make it your own, to provide rich, nurturing environment where your child can flourish his or her own way. It's like the first time you tried, riding a bicycle without training wheels. The fear of falling was real. It was there, right? But once you saw and you learned and you saw what you could do, and the riding was incomparable to anything else. So celebrate the small victories, learn from the bumps along the way, and remember that education is a journey. While I get to the end of my speech, I wanted to talk a little bit about the role of deschooling, because it's really important, and many people overlook it. Deschooling is an important tool because it's a transitional process where children and parents move away from conventional schooling mindsets and embrace a more natural learning approach. This period allows time to break free from the rigid structures and expectations of traditional education and to rediscover simply the joy of learning. Imagine it's like pressing a reset button on your educational outlook, allowing you to view learning through new lens. During this period, it is essential to give children the time to decompress. Time, okay? Patience. We were talking about patience yesterday. That's a key element of home education. Because in this society, we're used to click a button and get food at our door, get a new movie to watch, and, don't let me start on social media what it does to us. So learn to slow down, learn the pace of things. Other things, deschooling helps children, it helps parents too, though, because we have to adjust to the lifestyle, develop new routines, and foster a mindset of curiosity and exploration. We have to have flexible learning environments. After all, Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither is a perfect home education routine. So be kind to yourself. Grace. So, yeah. When those doubts creep in, what do you have to do? Take a deep breath and remind yourself why you chose this path. Maybe write it down and stick it on your fridge, okay? So it's always there. Look at the joy and curiosity in your child's eyes when they discover something new. Take a picture of it, put it near your mirror. So, wait a minute. I'm finished, but did we make a difference? We did! Look what the search engine says now. Children learning, we have music, we have outdoor fun, we have pets, we have a lot of things, we have friendship above all. So let's remember together the incredible potential that lies in home education, because it works. Thank you.
All right, can I have my slides, please? Am I supposed to? Oh, I'm supposed to press it. Okay. All right, so this is my family, and I've been homeschooling all my kids since birth. And my oldest is 21 now, and he's off in college. And then my second is going off to college as well. And so I feel like we've taken this journey 1 year at a time, one child at a time. And you get so excited, when they graduate and you realize, okay, they made it, yes. And sometimes, as Erica shared, we do have doubts as moms, and that's fine because we're so personally invested. And I always have to revisit the why of my homeschooling and remember kind of 3 foundational things as I homeschool my kids. And that's what I wanted to talk to you guys about. The first is that relationships lead to receptiveness. And even if we homeschool our kids and we do spend a lot of time with them, the truth is that we need to build intimate relationships with each of our children, because otherwise they're not going to be motivated, they're not going to be inspired learners. And I had to learn some of this the hard way. And I remember the first GHEX conference that I attended with my husband. It was in Berlin. And one of the speakers, Dr. Gordon Neufeld, he said that we cannot influence children whose hearts we do not have. And I find that when people pull their kids out of homeschooling, that's one of the challenges, because when kids are growing up with us and when you're homeschooling them from when they're little, there's still that very strong attachment that works in our favor as homeschoolers. But as they progress in their studies, and if they're not homeschooled and they go to conventional school, their attachment and their orientation turns towards peers and other interests, and we have to win them back. And so in our homeschooling, this is so important. It's a daily revisiting of our relationship with our children and a rebuilding of that. So one of my daughters, I found to have a very strong personality like my husband, very intense, and we kind of clashed in our personalities. And this was my struggle because I didn't think I was impatient until I started homeschooling her. And as I homeschooled her, I saw so many of my flaws come out. And it would leak out in my reactiveness towards her, and sometimes I would raise my voice. By God's grace, I didn't ever really yell at my kids, but girls are very sensitive to tone, and heightened tone can feel like yelling to them. And so I noticed that she pulled away, and her motivation really started to wane. And God reminded me, Joy, your motivations for homeschooling may be good, and the context where you are with them every day is a good thing, but you need to win each of your children's hearts, and it has to be very personal. And so I changed my approach with her because she was the kind of student that if I was going to correct her, I couldn't do it in front of her siblings. And really, we really shouldn't do that with any of our kids. So I would have to pull her aside if she was acting up, if she was demotivated, and just talk to her and assure her. And I would tell her, and we have to tell this to all our kids, you know, there's nothing that you can do that will make me love you less. But because I'm committed to you, I really want to help you grow as a person. And then I would ask her questions. Why aren't you interested in this subject? Is there something that mom's doing that's affecting the way you learn? And I would have to apologize if I hurt her feelings. And now we're super close, and she's so much more responsive. And so a good relationship leads to that receptiveness that we want our children to have. But the second thing is, and I always comfort, you know, newbie homeschoolers with this thought, that you don't have to be an expert. You know, I've homeschooled 6 kids, and to this day, I kind of think, how do we get through physics and calculus? And here's the reality. As children master basic skills and they mature emotionally, especially in the area of character, where they learn to obey, they learn to listen, they learn to focus, they learn to do their responsibilities, you will find that they become independent learners. And then the high school years actually become some of the best homeschooling years. Because I've found that as they become independent, they need me less and less, which is so great, right? because then I just facilitate the learning experience. I provide experiences, resources, an environment that's conducive to learning. But if they are great at reading, at comprehension, at the ability to articulate themselves in written and oral form, if they have learner's confidence because they've had mastery of skills, and if they know basic problem solving, then they basically educate themselves. And I had one son last year who did BC calculus, and it's no credit to me at all because I didn't teach him calculus. He taught himself. He used Khan Academy, and that's a great resource for you parents out there. And so you don't have to be an expert. At the beginning, and I would say that my expert level ran until grade 5, and then after that, it was like, okay, kids, you're on your own. And here's the thing, because they were never used to a classroom, they figured that, oh, this is normal. We have to teach ourselves, and they did. So the third thing is life itself is an education. Our children are learning all the time. So we maximize every moment because they're learning. And I have a little illustration here, and I won't go into everything, but I'll maybe share some stories. But just dialoguing and having discussions with our children leads to so much learning. I remember, and you probably as parents have gotten this question, where our kids have asked us, how does a baby get into a mommy's tummy? And that's a great education when it comes from us as parents. And then one of our kids was so interested in seeing what the inside of a computer was like. So my mom, she had this ability to spill coffee and water on her laptops, so she would destroy them. And so she had 3 of these laptops that were sitting outside her door one Christmas, and she was going to throw them away. And so my son, who's very mechanically inclined, said, Grandma, could I have those? And she was like, sure, what are you going to do with them? Well, I just want to see what's inside them. And so he spent about 3 homeschooling days opening up a laptop and studying, researching how to repair a laptop that Apple said could not be repaired. And after 3 days, I saw him with goggles and gloves, and he was taking this thing out to the balcony. I'm like, what are you doing? Oh, I just have to make sure that when I turn it on, it's not going to explode. And so he takes it out onto the balcony, and he has his siblings around him watching to see what's going to happen. And he got the laptop to work and to operate. And I thought, my goodness, he didn't do any of his books for the last 3 days, but he learned so much about computers. And so that's an education. And then one of our other sons, who was very scientifically inclined, when we would have these learn groups, and those are so great, when you gather together with other homeschoolers and you learn together. And I encouraged him, I said, son, you've done all the sciences. Why don't you teach the other kids? And I watched him. He was teaching about environmentalism. He was teaching them about biology and chemistry. And I had to pull him aside at one point, and I was like, you're teaching at a college level. Some of these kids are 9 years old. I think you need to bring the level down a bit. But he was so inspired as he was teaching them, and he did experiments with them. He did all kinds of research to do the class. And I realized this is real learning, where kids prepare on their own because they're excited about a topic, And you don't have to force them, as many of the moms said here, because they're engaged, because they're interested. And then I wanted to close with, they learn also through entrepreneurial ventures. During the pandemic, we started this little business. It's a very small business. We sell earrings, and it's called Wear Joy because we wanted people to put on joy during the pandemic. And so my girls helped me make the earrings, and the boys helped with the logistics and the selling. And so the kids learned how to do manufacturing. They learned quality control. They learned how to do marketing and sales, logistics and packaging, and coordinating with customers and making sure that there was customer satisfaction. And that was part of their learning experience. And so as I close, once again, when we think about how we educate our children, the first thing is we need to build a strong relationship with them. That's so important because relationship, that leads to receptiveness. And the second thing is that we need to make sure, oh my gosh, I just had a mental block. Hang on. So the second thing is that, of course, that we don't have to be the expert. As you can see, that is proof. I am not an expert at all as I stand here. And the third, of course, is that life is an education in itself. And if you allow your kids lots of space and time to learn, they will for sure learn. And you'll be surprised at how they become experts at things that they're interested in, and that carries them through as they mature and they grow into adulthood, and a lot of times that becomes their profession of choice. So God bless you all, and thank you for your time.
Hello, I'm Jan Smith, and y'all can buckle up because this is the condensed version of information and inspiration that is because we, Roger and I, truly believe that home education is the adventure of a lifetime. It is the hardest thing that you are ever going to do, but it is by far the best thing that you can do for your family. Roger and I started in the late 80s and the early 90s, and we had no one to compare to because we didn't know anyone else that was homeschooling. And so that wasn't an issue. We didn't have trouble deciding what curriculum to use because there was none available. And we were sure of this, though, that we loved our children and we were committed to seeing them learn and grow in the best way that they could, to give them the freedom to learn and grow the way they were intended to. And so I challenge you to think about the fact that you, as a mother, are the best teacher for your child because no one else is going to love that child and know that child like you do. No one else is going to fight for the resources that your child needs, whether they're gifted in excelling academically or whether they're a struggling learner and you see and you know that they are a smart child, but they have needs, and you're going to make sure that they find those resources that they need. So you as a mother are the best teacher for your child, and you have to believe in yourself that you are a woman of strong character, and that if you have a desire to learn, you can learn along with your child. And then you can, as Joy was saying, see them grow and learn far beyond your capacity. But the way they are bent and what they want to know, they will continue to learn in that way. You know, I started off with all confidence. I was so excited about learning with my children. And yet, as the years grew and as I saw them grow and develop, I started to lose my nerve. And as they were going into the high school years, one day I told Roger, I said, I think we need to put them back in school. They need a better teacher than me. And he looked at me and he said, Jan, look at our children. As we evaluate the fruit that we saw being born in their lives, the confidence, their joy in learning, their excitement about life, he said, if you were to die I would quit my medical practice and do ER work on the weekends because I am so committed to this concept of educating these children ourselves. And you know what? Until that time, we had said we'll homeschool a year at a time as long as it works for them and as long as it works for us, because it was a grand experiment. We didn't know for sure that this was going to work. It was a by faith experience. And after that, I realized I had my husband's full backing, and I went to the kids and I said, y'all, I'm sorry, I'm the best you got. And y'all just need to buck up, because here we go. We're going to do the best we can, so let's have the most fun we can. And I began again to trust God, and with my husband's full assurance that he was going to help more and more and more, that we finished through the end. You see, I had lost the belief in myself. In Hebrews 10:35 and 36, it says, therefore, do not throw away your confidence, for with it brings a great reward. For you have need of endurance, that after you have done the will of God, you will receive what was promised. And ours was that our children would grow and learn and love life and love learning. And now they're between the ages of 33 and 40, and guess what? It worked. It's a miracle. It works. Somehow, God takes our offering, our loaves and our bread and fishes, and He multiplies that. He meets the needs. If in a very tiny little town in rural North Louisiana, that He can meet the needs that my children had, resources beyond myself. I'd never had a foreign language. There are other people out there that could teach a foreign language and other things that they needed. I'd never owned a computer until when our oldest child was in the 6th grade, and he moved a computer specialist who used to do programming for Walmart, and move them next door in my tiny little town. God can provide the needs that you have to meet the needs of your children. So don't give up. Keep on keeping on, but know that you cannot give what you do not possess. And so you learn and grow along with those children. So committing every day to learning and to show up with your children, that's an essential part of homeschooling, of just being committed to doing it and to not being afraid to do it. And so, God doesn't require perfection, but it does require a lot of faithfulness to home educate your children, that every day we're going to give it our best. I recommend using a rhythm and not just a rigid schedule, because there is so much training that happens day in and day out, training that's really considered an interruption, but that is part of the essential component of just educating your children about life. So we would wake up at a regular time. Roger did devotions before he left for work. We had breakfast. Then we would do some cleanup and chores. We would do a regular lesson of some sort, whether you choose to do that as math or grammar or reading or whatever it is that you want. Do something that's focused in the morning. And then we did read alouds. We'd have a break. They would go outside and play. And I would think, oh my gosh, what are we having for lunch? Regular meals that come around all the time. Whether you're hungry or not, they get hungry. So be prepared. But I'm going to share with you 3 quick tips of things that I think should be a part of every homeschool environment for no matter what type of method you use, what approach you use. Find something that works for you and works for your child. And I find there are 2 extremes. Those mamas that are a little bit too relaxed and decide again today, oh, well, maybe we won't do school. And those that are too much, I kind of tended on that direction. There was never any way that I could do and accomplish with my children what I wanted to accomplish with them. But to find somewhere in that middle of being faithful every day to do what you can and to trust that your children are going to grow and learn at the pace that they need. I challenge you to read good books with your children. No matter what curriculum choice you have, good books is an essential part of a quality education for your child. Stories of adventure, stories of nobility, and of great courage and character. These are things that weave into the fabric of your child's life and into the person that they become. They are a source of your family's connectedness through stories around the world. Do you notice that in this picture that that's not a young child? Oh, I think you should start from the time they're little bitty, but I think you should continue until they're much older, because a child can hear a read aloud that is far above their level to read themselves. And the quality of the language, the wonderful, rich vocabulary, the syntax of an excellent sentence, it changes the education in your child's life. And I encourage you to read aloud. Read Aloud Revival is a source today that you can experience and utilize for a resource of great books. Get outside every day. Get outside with your children. Nature, science, and just the sunshine or the cold or the heat, whatever the weather, get outside. Jeannie Urich's 1,000 hours outside, 1,000 hours outside, use that as a resource to know why you need to get outside with your family. And then screens. Screens are an inevitable part of your child's life. It's going to be their primary language. So teach them deliberately to use a screen wisely, to be excellent in their use of computer, learning to type early. But I'm here to tell you, you've got to take away those screens from an early age and introduce them as a tool, not as an entertainment. You are enough for your child. Don't stop believing that you can do what you are called to do, and to know that through it all, somehow, it works.
Thank you, panelists. That was amazing. I wish I could go back and start over, because I was in the same boat as Jan, and that we started in the late 80s, and there was nothing there for us. We had to make it up as we went along. So now I would like to open it up for questions. Does anybody have any questions they would love to ask the panel? There's a mic for them and one for... Okay, I'm going to start with one that, oh, we've got one? Okay. You've got a question? Can you come down and use the mic so that the recording has it? There you go.
I have a question. What is your question?
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you. I really enjoyed listening to you all, and it's clear that there's so much experience on the stage. I'm on the other side of the experience that you all share, so I am very new to homeschooling, just about to actually start in September, so I've really enjoyed this talk. I do have two questions, if that's okay. So the first question is more directed to Erica. You mentioned the idea of deschooling, and I thought that that was really interesting. It would be really great to just hear a bit more about what that looks like practically, and also if there's anything like deschooling for the parents, because I come from a very academic background. All of my in-laws are in education and in the profession. And so the way I guess I've been taught is to teach children in a very specific way that is school-like, and I'm very conscious to not do that. So any tips about deschooling as a mum would be great. My children are 4 and 7.
Lovely, lovely. Thank you for this question. It's a pleasure to answer. When we want to start home education, we're very excited usually because it's a brand new thing and we read a lot At least that's what happened to me. And we're filled with ideas, and our imagination takes over. And, you know, all the wonderful things are going to be there. And it really depends how we convey them. I'll tell you a little story about my son, who is now 19, and he's in this room. And when I started, I was a teacher by profession as well, even if it was for a very short time, because I was in the structured, you know, classic school environment, and I didn't feel okay. You know, I just felt that we were missing out on so much, and so I decided to choose another work path. But I was there with all my background in education, and I had flashcards. We were sitting together. We had made it so comfortable, and I was going to teach him how to read. He was going to read. And so I'm lifting these flashcards, and he's looking at me puzzled. And he's looking at me puzzled for a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and he was like, "Mom, come on, this is so boring." He didn't express that, but his face, his body language was there. So I put everything away, and I walked back, and I was a little disheartened, and I'm like, okay, what am I gonna do now? What comes next? Well, lo and behold, at the time, there was the game of the Pokemon, and it was a game of cards. And I don't know if you're familiar with this, but every kid had these cards. And we had a lot of those cards in the house. And he would sit on the couch, and he would stare at these cards that had all the description of the characters and the number value and all that. Because every time he would go out and play with someone, he would lose because he couldn't read. Because these cards had all the information, but what if you could read a third of it or nothing at all? And so he would lose his cards. And by sitting there and staring, at a certain point, I hear him, and he's reading. He's reading because, and of course this takes time. I mean, for conversation reasons, we shrunk it up and it wasn't immediate. But he started reading because of the Pokemon cards. He started reading because of the comic books, because he wanted to know what that page said. Why was Donald Duck laughing on that page? I don't know, I'll find out. And so it's the intrinsic motivation that really matters. And that's a perfect example of how, you know, things happen like we were hearing, and it happened, and it seems magical, but it's actually practical, and it's because they want to learn. So to get back to your deschooling, I was very schooled. I was a teacher, and then I learned to observe, and I learned to slow down, and I learned to see the practicality in what they have to do and why they want to do things. And I supervised, I encouraged. I was more like a cheerleader sometimes rather than the instructor. So advice on deschooling is really this. It's to take the time. We are rushed, and the pressure comes on us from external environment, and we really need to protect it. A lot of home education, I think, is protecting our children. And I'm not saying it as in putting them in a box and closing it. No, I'm saying it as really there's too much out there to process for little children, even for us adults. And a lot of our work is that. And I think deschooling is the same. Sometimes I heard that there's a timeline for deschooling. They sometimes said, I don't know who came out with this, maybe it was John Holt or someone, like a month for each year of school. But it really doesn't work that way. It depends on the family. I don't know if I was thorough enough here.
I wanted to just add to that is that we really need to instruct ourselves on how children learn, to understand actually how we learn, and ask those questions, because part of the whole schooling thing is this almost the thing that they don't trust children to learn by themselves. And they think that you can only learn if somebody's standing in front of you, talking to you, or if you have a book in front of you, like we had that image earlier, yeah. And I found it really helpful to go and find some good books to read on how children learn. John Holt was a game changer for me, so if you can find John Holt's How Children Learn or How Children Fail, and there's another one called Teach Your Own, which he wrote in collaboration with Patrick Ferenga. Watch Sir Ken Robinson's videos on creativity and how schools kill creativity. Go and find some blogs written by home educators and their experiences. On my last slide, I would have, if I'd got to it, I would have said, so I run a conference every year called Learn Free in the UK. We have a YouTube channel with lots of videos with people sharing about how they how they home educate, and those are really helpful. And I also have an organization called Streams, streams.education. We have a YouTube channel with webinars. Go and find those sorts of materials and just watch them, just drench yourself in them you kind of almost have to school yourself again, but in actually how people learn. Look at how you learn, what turns your lights on, because that is actually what we want, is a lights-on learner. We don't want people whose lights are off when they're looking at flashcards, like, what on earth? So, that is vitally important for you to do all of that research even before you're starting, and to talk to lots of people who have home educated. If you're in the UK, please come chat to me afterwards and I'll see if I can connect you.
Thank you.
Is there another question?
Sorry, swapping a baby for a microphone. Thanks so much for all of your stories and sharing your experiences. Something I often get asked, and I'm interested to hear your opinions on it, is how do you protect yourself as a mother, and how do you not get burnt out, basically? And I'm just interested, I know the theoretical behind that, but I'm interested in your hacks, your tips, what makes you alive and happy to be homeschooling every morning? Is it exercise? Is it whatever? I'm just interested. I love asking mothers that.
I could answer, but I'll let some of the others have a go.
Okay. I started with my kids at school, and I ended up being a slave to a timetable. I was running to get them up, I was running to get them dressed, I was running to get them to have breakfast and clean and be in school, and then come quickly back and then take the dogs out and then clean the house and then go back there. And then you get stuck in that thing, and that is not sexy, that is not what I thought being an amazing mom would be. I was a wreck. And the pressure in today's world, you're supposed to, on top of being a wreck, look good at being a wreck. And then you homeschool, and all of a sudden it's raining, and you get up in the morning and the kids are still sleeping, and you take that time. Or, they're busy, they're playing, they're discovering something. And then it's also okay to say, from this time to that time, today mom and dad are, going out or taking time for themselves. There's so many analogies of, if a candle's not lit, it can't shine bright light or whatever. You can't give what you don't have. And I think it is important to take time for yourself. But I found, at least in my experience, it just happened because my kids were not under stress, because they were happy to just lie on the floor, read a book. I found I was much more a relaxed mom than a lot of my friends and neighbors whose kids were at school, because my kids didn't feel that need to always hang with me the second they were back home. That's maybe part of it. I don't know. There's moms here with more kids than me.
Since I assume that's your husband with you? Yeah, okay. So I think you have a key role, sir. Honestly, I just wanted to share this part because I think it's been such a joy to homeschool together as husband and wife. And I think that's key, where the husband provides support as well. And I know that my husband works hard so that I can homeschool the kids and be at home, but he does take me out on dates. And that's really important. So on a very practical, sweet level, just being able to get out and just be with my husband. Or sometimes it's just like we lock ourselves in the room and tell the kids not to come in because mommy and daddy need talking time. And that's a break in itself. But I find that my day usually begins the day before. If I'm pretty disciplined about going to bed at the right time the day before, then I can wake up early enough to have prayer time with the Lord and walk. And as a Christian, I read my Bible, and that honestly fills me, because it's very hard to love your children unconditionally if you're running on spiritual emptiness. And so that personally is what works for me. Yeah.
So amen to everything that's been said, but in terms of the burnout, my encouragement in that regard is that if you're beginning to be overwhelmed, then I want you to evaluate how can you simplify. Usually there are 3 areas that you need to evaluate. Is it something that you need to simplify for in the children's schedule? Because we have so much pressure in today's society to have our children doing all the things, dance and sports or travel ball and then karate and music lessons, 4 up. And that's too much. It's just too much. So you might simplify and have each child do one thing. You can't do all the things all the time, especially when they're young, like yours are, that you begin to allow them to try one thing. Maybe one year they do gymnastics and the next year they do dance, or the year, and you've got plenty of years to determine what it is they love and what they don't like. And we're doing too much too early with our children, in my opinion. So simplifying their schedules, simplifying your academics. Maybe you're trying to do every subject with every child, and you need to combine and do some unit study approaches where for the history and the science and several of the reading things that you're doing that as a family unit with all of the children together. Sometimes it's a matter of simplifying your home, that you've got too much stuff and you need to eliminate. We have sometimes overeager grandparents, of which I am one, and they buy too many gifts and too much stuff for your children. They only need so many stuffies, or bears. So divide them in thirds and put 2/3 of them away and rotate them every quarter of the year. Pull out new toys. It's like, everything's brand new. Or get rid of some of them, especially those that make noise and do all the thinking for the kids. So to simplify, if you're overwhelmed, simplify.
Any other questions?
Sure.
Okay.
I like that bit about the husband. I just heard that part earlier. I want to call that out.
Well, the follow-on question would be, any tips for the husbands? How do we survive? And what tips should we be having to support the whole program?
First, I think you've got to believe in the value of what your wife is doing. Today, women have so much pressure that they need to be contributing financially to the home. And if they are doing their job well, then you've got to support and encourage them and validate. It takes a lot of time to nurse that baby you're holding, and no one's going to pay her to do that. But your words of encouragement as to the value of those bonding moments in those early years, all the psychologists agree and psychiatrists have researched the value of those first 5 years are immeasurable and cannot be replaced, no matter how much love that child is given later. And yet in those early years, it feels like you're not doing anything but wiping their nose and wiping their bottom, and that surely anybody else could do that. But you as the mother doing that bond, it's important. In our home, my husband set the temperature by early in the mornings doing devotions with the children before he left. And every evening after dinner, he read aloud. And as the kids got older, he got more and more involved. And as a chemistry major, he taught the chemistry, not me, thank you. And other things that he taught, he got more and more involved as the children got older, especially with your sons. They need you. Your daughters need you. So you are key from believing in the value of what she's doing now to getting more and more and more involved, teaching them to work, hundreds of things, but especially believing in the value of what's happening in the home.
Yeah, I mean, I agree 100% with everything that Jan said. And I just want to echo a little bit. You know, when we have, like, say, character issues with the kids, I will often dialogue with the principal of our homeschool, which is my husband, who is my husband. And I'll say, "Hun, I think we need to address this issue." And I appreciate it so much that he will gather the children. You know, husbands, dads, they have this way of gathering the children, and the kids are super responsive, and the kids will attend to what he's saying, and he'll say, "You know what, kids, you need to be more focused," or he'll do a devotion that's related to a character issue that they're dealing with. And you'll see a remarkable change in the climate of our homeschooling because a father is involved in building the character of the children. And somehow God has appointed you guys with this special ability to do that. And it seems to be much like super effective when the fathers come alongside and do that, build the character in the children. So that's one way that we would really appreciate husbands helping out.
There is a Bible verse that says, "A house divided against itself cannot stand." And I see the biggest challenges happens in families where the husband and wife are not in agreement. It's immensely stressful, particularly as a mother, if you've been really observing your children and learning to trust them, that they're able to learn, and sometimes you need to give them space to learn and develop and grow. And the husband or the partner might look at that and say, "But you're not doing anything." They're not doing anything. They should be doing this and they should be doing that. And often it's comparing it to a school model. Like my husband used to come back from his workplace and say, "Well, you know, they're going to have to get GCSEs, you know, because, you know, they always look at that. They always look at that," because he was hearing it from his workplace. So you need to do your own research. You need to understand how learning happens and try and get as much on the same page as possible so that you can be unified in your approach, because that to me is the most powerful thing, because a child will feel it if you're pulled apart. So I think that is really, really key to success.
Also,
I'm just gonna jump in here. We have dad barbecues in Switzerland, so they can sit together and share notes on how annoying it is to come home and have a science experiment going on and no dinner on the table. I would say first thing is you must know that we count on you guys. We are conscious that you're not part of it somehow because you're working, but because you're at work and because you pay the bills when it comes down to the nitty-gritty, we are able to live that with our children, and we're immensely grateful for that. And there is so much you can do. Like my husband's way of supporting us, he comes home at night, everybody gets a hug, and then he goes and he makes dinner. That is his thing. And then the kids, now they're older, they go to the kitchen, they stand around, they chat with him. And that is a time that I have to, you know, switch off and do what I want. That is what works for us, and you have to find what works for you. But yeah, stick together and know that we are very, very conscious that even if you're not here, you are an absolutely important piece of this experiment. Yes, and sometimes the house is going to be a mess. Please forgive us for that.
My mic? Okay. I was just going to say that if you come back to this room at 3 o'clock this afternoon, we have a talk on Double the Trouble, coming from homeschool couples on their relationship and how homeschooling affects it. Are there any other questions?
It's time for coffee.
Are we done?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much, panelists. That was amazing. Thank you, audience.